I work in tech, specifically building compliance systems for financial companies. Well, worked there. Past tense now, sort of. The entire situation is so bizarre that I need to tell someone about it. I've been with Summit Financial Technologies for nearly 2 decades. Started back when it was literally a startup operating above a nail salon with 3 developers and a whiteboard that smelled like broken dreams. I built their entire audit infrastructure from scratch, line by painful line of code. Every security protocol, every compliance engine, every data model, it was my creation. Now here's where it gets complicated. My wife, Laura, is the chief financial officer at the same company. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Working with your spouse sounds like a terrible idea. But honestly, it worked fine for years. We kept things professional at the office, personal at home, clean boundaries. Until her ex-husband entered the picture. Marcus Sullivan. Laura's ex from before we met. This guy is the textbook definition of failing upward in corporate America. He got hired as a consultant about 2 years back, brought in to revolutionize our systems. His big project was supposed to automate our compliance framework and make everything cutting edge. Instead, he nearly burned down the entire accounting system. We're talking federal audit-level catastrophe, the kind that gets companies fined into oblivion. So what did upper management do when Marcus almost destroyed everything? They gave him a participation trophy. Demoted him to strategic consultant, which is corporate speak for someone who gets a 6-figure salary to say buzzwords like synergy and cross-functional alignment without actually doing anything measurable. Meanwhile, I spent 3 straight weeks working nights and weekends fixing Marcus's disaster. 12 to 14-hour days, surviving on gas station coffee and pure spite. I reprogrammed his broken mess so the company wouldn't get slapped with regulatory penalties. I was exhausted but figured at least I'd get some acknowledgement at the quarterly all-hands meeting. Maybe a simple thanks from management, possibly even a genuine compliment from my wife. Boy, was I wrong. The meeting started like every corporate ritual. Laura stood at the front looking perfectly professional, hair immaculate, wearing that expensive suit that screamed executive authority. Behind her stood Marcus with this smug grin, wearing cologne strong enough to qualify as a biohazard. Laura cleared her throat and began discussing the recent audit situation. I leaned back waiting for my moment of recognition. Instead, she slammed a folder on the table, hard enough to make half the interns jump. She announced that before moving forward, she needed to make something clear. I was being removed from the audit project immediately until I issued a public apology to Marcus. In front of 200 employees, the entire conference room went dead silent. You could have heard someone's keyboard click 3 cubicles away. Marcus did this fake, humble routine, tilting his head and saying it wasn't personal, just about maintaining team harmony. Team harmony. This coming from a guy who once misspelled budget in a board presentation and blamed it on the intern's negative energy. Everyone in that room was waiting for me to explode, to argue, to defend myself, to make a scene that would become office legend. They wanted the drama, the confrontation, the emotional meltdown. Instead, I just smiled calmly and said one word, okay. That's it, nothing else. Just a simple, polite acknowledgement. The verbal equivalent of pulling a grenade pin and casually walking away. Laura blinked in confusion. She'd clearly expected a fight, rehearsed her responses for my protests. But I gave her nothing. Just calm agreement. The whole office looked confused, like they'd been promised fireworks and got elevator music instead. The meeting ended awkwardly. People scattered fast. Marcus lingered behind, pretending to help Laura collect papers, mostly trying to look important. I grabbed my coffee mug and gave him my best passive-aggressive smile. I congratulated him on his promotion and said I hoped he enjoyed the view from middle management purgatory. He chuckled nervously and told me I really needed to learn how to work with people, that my attitude was what kept me from real leadership roles. I nodded like I was genuinely considering his wisdom. Then I said that leadership was apparently about letting your wife's ex manage projects without basic Excel literacy. His smile twitched, but he recovered quickly, saying it was just business. I agreed. Just business. But internally, I was already 3 steps ahead. See, when someone tries to publicly humiliate you, the real power move isn't fighting back in the moment. It's letting them think they succeeded while you quietly dismantle their foundation. Back at my desk, people avoided eye contact like I had a contagious disease. HR peeked out nervously from her office, probably drafting an incident report. One intern mouthed, asking if I was okay. I smiled and mouthed back that I'd never been better. I spent the rest of that day officially off the project, which really just meant I had time to clean up personal files, make encrypted backups, and review some contracts I hadn't looked at since the company rebranded years ago. Around lunch, Laura texted saying we'd talk later. I replied suggesting she bring Marcus, since he seemed to be running things now. No response. By afternoon, Marcus sent me a message trying to extend an olive branch, asking if there were any hard feelings. I told him of course not. I'd hate to see him get emotional at work again. He didn't respond either. When I got home that evening, Laura was in the kitchen with a wine glass, acting like nothing had happened. She asked if I'd had a rough day while swirling her Chardonnay like she was auditioning for reality television. I said, "Not really, I just got some free time." She laughed nervously and asked if I was actually mad. I pointed out that she'd embarrassed Marcus during meetings by essentially calling him incompetent. She got defensive, saying he was trying to rebuild his career and I didn't have to make it harder. I reminded her that she divorced him for a reason. Her jaw tightened. She said that wasn't the point, that sometimes I didn't understand corporate politics. I told her I understood perfectly. I just didn't play checkers with people who thought they were playing chess. She sighed and said I was being dramatic. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and said I appreciated the public character assassination, that it really added flavor to my Thursday. She took another sip of wine, realizing this conversation wasn't ending with reconciliation. She said I could just apologize and make things easier. I asked easier for who? For her, for Marcus, for the HR department already drafting memos about spousal workplace dynamics. Then I put my beer down and smiled. I told her she was right. Maybe I should apologize. Her face softened with relief. I said I'd do it tomorrow morning, publicly. She exhaled, satisfied. I walked past her toward the stairs, saying she'd definitely get her apology. What she didn't realize was that my version of an apology doesn't come with tears and groveling. It comes with strategy, silence, and paperwork. That night, while she scrolled through her phone in bed, probably texting friends about how she'd handled the situation professionally, I was in the study going through old files. Contract archives, system diagrams, consulting agreements from the early days, digital paperwork that makes or breaks empires. Then I found it. My original consulting agreement from 18 years ago, when the company was called Delta Systems and operated on caffeine and delusion. Buried in the legal jargon was Clause 9B. It stated that in the event of termination without cause, all derivative systems remain property of the consultant. Translation? If they ever removed me unfairly, I owned the technical backbone of their entire operation. Every audit script, every compliance tool, every data framework. They could fire me, but they couldn't use what I built without proper licensing and compensation. I'd written that clause back when the company had no legal department, and the founder approved it with a thumbs up emoji. Classic startup energy. Nobody reads past page 2. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my beer, and whispered to myself that Laura had just lit the fuse. Congratulations. The next few days were absolutely theatrical. Marcus started dropping by my desk uninvited, using phrases like quick sync and collaboration culture. He'd lean against my cubicle wall, sipping from his company mug that said, "Innovation starts with you." He'd ask if we were aligned. I'd reply that we were. He was facing north, I was facing the exit. During one review session, Marcus proudly showcased a new framework that was literally my design from 6 months earlier, just copy-pasted and renamed Sullivan Flow. The absolute nerve. Everyone nodded politely, pretending not to notice it was plagiarized. When he asked for my thoughts, I said I thought plagiarism was the sincerest form of flattery. The room went silent. Laura shot me a death glare. Marcus's smile twitched. After the meeting, Laura cornered me in the hallway, saying I was pushing it. I told her I wasn't pushing anything, just adapting per her last message. She groaned that I was impossible. I said that's why she married me. Twice the entertainment and half the meetings. That night we sat through dinner in silence. She scrolled through her phone while I replayed every conversation, confirming what I already knew. This wasn't office politics anymore. This was marital Cold War disguised as quarterly alignment. When she finally looked up, she said, "Marcus thought I was undermining him." I almost laughed. Told her I didn't need to undermine him. He was doing that himself. She said I was making her look bad. I pointed out she made herself look bad the moment she asked her husband to apologize to his replacement. She didn't respond, just walked upstairs, leaving her wine half finished. I cleaned up, poured another drink, and looked out at the city skyline. My reflection in the glass looked tired but amused. Friday morning started with another mandatory all-hands meeting. Hosted by Laura at 9 in the morning, which wasn't an update, it was a public execution with better lighting. 200 faces appeared on my screen during the Zoom call. Laura looked perfectly composed, that CFO calm plastered on like a PR campaign. Marcus sat beside her beaming like he'd just discovered the share screen button. Laura began by saying they'd been working on reestablishing a culture of collaboration after recent tensions. Tensions. That's what you call a bad Wi-Fi signal, not your CFO publicly disciplining her husband because her ex couldn't follow basic procedure. She clicked to a slide showing stock photos of smiling employees around a whiteboard, the kind that smells like unpaid overtime. She said she needed to address an internal concern regarding leadership behavior. Then she looked directly at the camera, at me, said it had been brought to her attention that certain individuals had been creating a culture of fear and inflexibility. The entire call went silent. She continued saying that while technical excellence was important, team harmony was equally vital. When feedback becomes confrontation and collaboration turns into control, everyone loses. Then came the hammer. Effective immediately, I was being removed from oversight of all ongoing compliance audits until further review. My messages exploded instantly. People asking what I'd done, if I was okay, if I needed a lawyer. Marcus leaned forward with that condescending smile, adding that this wasn't punitive, just about promoting a safe and creative environment. Safe and creative. Nothing screams creativity like removing the guy who prevented federal fines. Laura clasped her hands, waiting for my reaction. The moment hung heavy. She expected me to argue, to unmute and defend myself, to make it messy. That's what everyone wanted. Instead, I smiled slightly. Then I unmuted and said one word. Okay, calm, polite, lethal. 200 faces froze. Marcus's smile died. Laura blinked twice, completely thrown off script. She asked me to repeat myself. I said she was right, that culture was important and to please proceed. Then, without another word, I clicked leave meeting and was gone. No mic drop, no outburst, just silence. The digital equivalent of walking off stage and letting the applause die awkwardly. My phone buzzed immediately. Messages asking if I just ended the internet. Within 10 minutes, my inbox exploded. Emails from Laura, HR, the CEO, the company lawyer. Subject lines like urgent and please respond. I didn't open a single one. Silence is the most underrated weapon in business. It forces everyone else to create their own narrative about your motives. By lunch, the rumor mill was spinning. People saying I was resigning, that I was suing, that I was having a breakdown. Some didn't even know I was married to the CFO. Around 1 in the afternoon, I finally checked my phone. Laura had texted asking what that was, saying I'd embarrassed her in front of the entire company. I replied that I thought we were promoting transparency. No response. At 2:30, she called. I didn't answer. She called again. Finally, I picked up on the third ring just to enjoy the suspense. Her voice was sharp enough to cut steel. She said I couldn't just log off a company meeting like that. I told her sure I could. I clicked a button. She told me to be serious. I said I was serious, that she wanted an apology and got acknowledgement, which was practically the same thing in corporate language. She sighed in frustration. I told her to put it in my performance review and hung up. I went back to pulling up old files, not work files. My personal archives from the early consulting days when the company was a 2-room startup. Back then, I'd built the backbone of everything. The compliance engines, the audit triggers, the security protocols. The kind of foundational code that makes or breaks billion-dollar acquisitions. And somewhere in that dusty contract folder was my particular insurance policy. Clause 9B, but I wasn't ready to play that card yet. Not until they played theirs first. By evening, the entire office had descended into chaos. Someone leaked the Zoom recording. It was circulating on company chat channels under the title CFO versus Husband Dawn of Compliance. HR tried deleting it, but You can't stop the internet once it smells scandal. People were making memes. One had my face photoshopped over a movie character saying, "Okay," with the caption perfectly balanced. Laura didn't come home until late. When she finally walked in, she looked exhausted, her professional appearance now a disaster. She demanded to know if I had any idea what I'd done. I was calmly eating steak I'd made for dinner. I said, "Yeah, I saved myself a meeting." She snapped that this wasn't funny, that the CEO wanted answers, the board was asking questions, HR was threatening to mediate. I said that sounded perfect. Maybe they'd finally learn what mediation actually meant. She threw her bag on the couch, asking why I couldn't just cooperate for once. I looked up from my plate and said, because I wasn't the one who turned our marriage into a management case study. She said I'd humiliated her. I replied calmly that she'd humiliated herself. All I did was stop participating. For a second, she said nothing, then softer, asking if I'd regret this. I finished my bite and said maybe, but not tonight. She stormed upstairs without another word. I waited until I heard the bedroom door slam before pulling out my laptop again. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was awake. I'd played by corporate rules too long. Polite, deferential, logical. But the game was rigged. People like Marcus failed upward, while people like me cleaned the mess quietly, in the dark, no more. I made a few adjustments to back-end systems. Nothing destructive, just delicate edits. Small changes nobody would notice until they mattered. Then I saved everything to an encrypted drive labeled Drake Core. A little inside joke. When I shut the laptop, I felt lighter. Peaceful, even. Let them think they'd won. Let them print memos and whisper about damage control. Monday would come soon enough, bringing consequences with it. Because in corporate America, silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of a plan taking shape. That weekend passed quietly. Laura spent most of it pretending to work while checking if I'd apologized yet. She asked if I was coming to the investor brunch on Sunday. I said I wouldn't miss it. She seemed satisfied, not realizing the picture I had in mind was me walking out of the frame entirely. Sunday evening, I cooked dinner. Steak, garlic potatoes, wine for her, and whiskey for me. Domestic calm before corporate Armageddon. She seemed lighter, like she'd already rewritten the narrative in her head. Halfway through dinner, she said she thought things were getting better, that Marcus told her the board was impressed with how she'd handled everything. I almost laughed. Just said that was one word for it. She smiled proudly, saying it was all smoothing out. I nodded and said it would be eventually. She completely missed my tone, and that night while she watched Netflix upstairs, I made one last adjustment. A single delayed trigger in the license database. A timed expiration that would quietly deactivate their compliance dashboard Monday morning. Not enough to destroy anything, just enough to make clear who'd really been running the show. Then I closed the laptop for good. The soft click felt like punctuation. Monday morning, I wasn't at the office. I was at home in sweats with a bowl of cereal, watching their internal company live stream through a backdoor diagnostic feed I'd built years ago for system monitoring. The meeting started at 9 sharp. Laura walked in wearing her victory heels, those expensive ones that click like tiny declarations of war. Marcus trailed behind, clutching printouts he'd definitely made just for show. Laura opened with her practiced smile, saying last week was challenging, but they were moving forward stronger than ever. Then Marcus stepped up, clicking his remote to demonstrate the updated compliance dashboard streamlined for maximum efficiency. He turned to the projector. Blank screen. He clicked again. Nothing. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Laura frowned. Marcus laughed nervously, calling it a technical glitch. Someone from IT said they were already checking. The screens behind him flickered like dying lights. Then one by one, the dashboards vanished, replaced by error messages. License invalid. Contact administrator. Marcus's smile froze. Laura turned pale. The CEO leaned forward, whispering something off microphone. Marcus stammered that it was just a temporary issue, a network hiccup. He tried opening the investor portal next. Same message. Access revoked. Contact Drake Core Systems. At home, I poured another bowl of cereal. The meeting descended into absolute chaos. People started whispering. It was frantically rebooting things. The CFO's composure cracked like cheap porcelain. Marcus fumbled through excuses about legacy software interference. Laura finally snapped, slamming her hand on the podium and demanding someone get me on the phone immediately. By 10:15, my phone started ringing. Laura's name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, she texted saying the system was down and asking me to please respond, that this wasn't funny. I typed back saying it wasn't funny, it was educational. 5 dots appeared, then vanished. She was typing, deleting, typing again. I could practically feel the panic vibrating through the screen. Another text came from Marcus, trying to sound casual, saying they were in a bit of a jam and asking if I could jump on a quick call. I replied that I was sorry, but I was off the project. It felt poetic. By noon, my inbox exploded with messages titled urgent and critical. The CEO sent one that began with Mr. Drake instead of the casual hey they usually used. That's when you know they're scared. They switched to formality. He wrote saying it appeared their systems had encountered a serious licensing issue, and they believed it related to my legacy infrastructure. He asked me to contact him immediately so they could resolve this amicably. Amicably. Corporate speak for before we call lawyers. I poured another cup of coffee and replied saying I'd be happy to assist. However, as the rightful license holder of the Drake Core framework, and I attached the contract showing Clause 9b, my consulting services would need to be re-engaged under standard vendor terms. I asked him to have legal contact my office to discuss retainer options. I hit send and took a long, satisfying sip. That was my version of lighting a victory cigar. Laura called again. I ignored it. She tried from her office phone. Ignored that, too. She sent an email with the subject, please, saying inside just one line, they're blaming me. For a second, I felt something. Not quite guilt, more like nostalgia. I remembered the woman I married before she became the company, back when she laughed without spreadsheets and kissed me without scheduling it. Then I remembered her standing in that conference room, announcing I was off the project until I apologized to her ex-husband. Yeah. Sympathy deleted. Around 11 in the morning, their lawyer, Melissa, called me directly. She sounded winded, like she'd sprinted through 5 meetings and 2 existential crises. She said they were reviewing the contract and it appeared Clause 9b was indeed enforceable. I said appeared was an interesting word choice. The clause was notarized, time-stamped, and signed by their founder. Technically, I owned the framework. She sighed audibly and asked if we could discuss a buyout. I said sure, but my rates had gone up considerably. Supply and demand? She groaned, saying she'd get back to me. I told her to take her time, that she had about 0 system access left anyway. By mid-afternoon, the company was hemorrhaging productivity like a sinking ship. The CEO was having a breakdown. Investors were threatening to pull out. Meanwhile, I was on my porch with my laptop, watching the chaos from my back-end administrative view. Then around 3:45, Laura showed up at the house. She didn't knock, just stormed in with her heels clicking like gunshots. She said I needed to stop this, that they were about to shut down operations. I told her calmly, without looking up from my laptop, that I didn't break anything. She crossed her arms, saying I'd crippled them. I corrected her. I'd paused their subscription. They could resume any time by signing the vendor agreement. She glared and said I was enjoying this. I finally looked up and met her eyes. Told her I wasn't enjoying it, just appreciating accountability since it was rare these days. She sank into the armchair across from me, her entire posture deflating. After a long silence, she said they were going to fire Marcus. I said I'd send flowers. Her voice got softer, asking what about her. I echoed the line she'd once used on me. Actions have consequences, remember? She didn't respond, just stared at the floor. After what felt like forever, she whispered that I'd won. I leaned back and told her it wasn't a game. It was business. The part she'd always forgotten. For the first time in weeks, she had no comeback. No corporate buzzwords, no damage control jargon, just quiet. After she left, I reopened my email and saw a new message from the CEO. Subject said contract negotiation. Inside, he wrote that they'd like to retain Drake Core Systems immediately, and legal was drafting a new consulting agreement. He said to expect payment terms within the hour. Signed respectfully. Respectfully. That's corporate speak for we surrender. By 6 that evening, my bank app pinged with a deposit notification. An absolutely obscene consulting retainer, paid in full. The same company that publicly humiliated me was now paying me to fix the mess they created. I heard through the grapevine that Marcus got reassigned to strategic ideation with no duties, no access, and no future. Laura was suspended pending internal review. HR called it temporary leave to ensure objectivity. I called it karma on paid time off. As the sun set below the skyline, I closed my laptop and poured a whiskey. For the first time in years, the world felt balanced. Some might call it revenge. I called it realignment. The company got their lesson, Laura got her reckoning, and I got my peace plus a very comfortable retainer. And the best part? I never raised my voice once, because in corporate America, the loudest power move is silence and a well-timed invoice. A week after everything settled, the company called me. Not for emergency support this time. They wanted to offer me the Chief Technology Officer position, the CTO role overseeing all infrastructure globally for the entire holdings group. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. I told them I already controlled those systems. The difference was, I got paid more now and attended fewer meetings. The CEO tried his reasonable voice saying their investors wanted stability and trusted me. After what happened, they saw me as the reason they survived. I pointed out that I was the reason they survived, which was exactly why I wasn't sure I wanted to be trapped in the building I'd just rescued. He dangled the magic words: equity, stock options, authority to hire and fire across all departments, including finance. I told him to send the offer, and I'd review it. He sounded relieved. The offer letter arrived the next day. The salary was obscene. The perks included stock options, a corner office, and authority to restructure departments. I could technically fire my own wife, though she'd already resigned by then. I accepted with one condition. Laura stayed completely off my chain of command. No overlap, no reporting structure, no shared meetings, nothing. The CEO agreed quickly, then added that Laura had actually submitted her resignation the night before. Personal reasons. I froze for a moment, then told him I understood and to send the onboarding schedule. That Friday, I walked into Summit Financial for the first time as an executive. The same front desk that used to ignore me now smiled like I was royalty. The elevator ride felt surreal. People avoided making eye contact like I was both a savior and a warning sign. My new office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. Private lounge, standing desk made from expensive materials. It was ridiculous and perfect. The first week was strange. Running into Marcus in the hallway, him carrying another cardboard box wearing an ill-fitting suit. He congratulated me with a forced smile. I told him it's not chess if your opponent doesn't know the rules. He nodded and left. I got a text from an unknown number a few days later. Laura saying congratulations, I'd earned it. I replied hoping she was doing okay. She never responded. The press called it a redemption story. An ousted engineer who saved the company. They didn't know the truth. I'd never left. You can't be fired from a system you own. My silence had done more damage than any lawsuit ever could. I didn't yell, didn't slam doors, didn't send threatening emails. I just let the system speak for me, one error message at a time. People ask how it feels now that everything's settled. Honestly, quiet. The best revenge isn't burning bridges or destroying careers. It's building something so fundamental that removing you means removing the foundation. Last week, an investment group offered to license my framework for triple what Summit pays. I accepted immediately. Business is good when you own the infrastructure everyone desperately needs. Marcus is somewhere doing strategic ideation, which sounds like they're paying him to stay away. Laura's consulting somewhere generic, rebuilding herself outside the company. I don't hate her anymore, but I don't love her either. I've just outgrown needing her approval. I left a sticky note on my desk the other day. It says, never underestimate the guy who smiles and says, okay. Because that's the real lesson here. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't fighting back. It's letting people think they've won while you quietly pull the floor out from under them. I built something unbreakable, lost it, and took it back without raising my voice once. The silence was always louder than any argument could have been. So that's my story. From scapegoat to chief technology officer in 1 month, all because I wrote one clever contract clause 18 years ago and had the patience to wait for exactly the right moment to use it. The moral of this whole mess? Always read your contracts thoroughly. And if you're planning to publicly humiliate someone, maybe check first whether they own your entire digital infrastructure. Just a thought.